finally, as if that were not a crazy enough story, we got to finish off here, and this blows my mind. Jemele Hill sent a tweet last night. Jemele Hill sent a tweet last night during the State of the Union suggesting that Donald Trump should be assassinated. You'll remember our friend Jemele Hill, formerly of Woke Center at ESPN. They handed her the franchise at ESPN. She drove it into a ditch. She called Donald Trump a white supremacist, refused to apologize. ESPN refused to hold her accountable, did nothing for that. Then last night, during the State of the Union, she made an assassination joke. Joke is being kind, suggesting that Alexandria, let's see what her name is, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the good-looking young Democrat who just got elected from New York, that she should say, "Get your hand out of my pocket," which was what was said right before Malcolm X was shot. If you remember the assassination of Malcolm X, somebody made a huge scene by saying, "Get your hand out of my pocket." And when that happened, Malcolm X was then shot as everybody was distracted. So Jemele Hill, who is now employed by, unbelievably enough, Jemele Hill, who is now employed by The Atlantic, is making assassination jokes, to be kind, during the State of the Union address. And this story has blown up in a big way. And look, in general, my position is pretty straightforward on this. I don't think anybody should get fired for a tweet. I dislike the idea that you send one tweet and it somehow invalidates years of you for work, right? I don't think that makes any sense at all. But I have to say this. If you are dumb enough to make an assassination comment about the sitting president of the United States, you deserve to be investigated by the Secret Service, and you deserve whatever condemnation rains down upon you. Furthermore, if you are dumb enough to make that comment after you have already provoked the ire of everyone by calling Donald Trump a white supremacist, to me, this further elucidates what is ultimately Donald Trump's greatest gift. That is that his critics are all crazier and more deranged than he is. I don't think Donald Trump's a perfect president. I didn't vote for him. But I think he's pretty okay. You know, there's lots of things every president has done that I don't agree with. I root for all of them to be successful. And what is wild to me is that Trump's critics are actually pushing people like me who are fairly middle of the road and actually disagree with Donald Trump on a lot of issues into his camp. Because I look out there and I say, my God, the people opposed to Donald Trump are crazier than he is. They're out here tweeting assassination comments during his State of the Union that was actually an incredibly good State of the Union that was very middle of the road. And this is why I've said this from the get-go. When you actually look at what Donald Trump has espoused, he is the most liberal Republican to hold office since Teddy Roosevelt. People get lost in the trolling, in the flash, in the substance, in the attitude, in the persona of Donald Trump, and don't actually look at the substance of what he does. The substance is relatively middle of the road. Guys, it ain't far right. It ain't ideological that totally isolates him from everybody else. Almost no one talks about the fact that Donald Trump, from a social perspective, is the most liberal president to ever be in the White House, going all the way back for Republicans to Teddy Roosevelt. And so when I see people like Jemele Hill behaving like they are, I think what is ultimately the most jarring about it is the lack of sophistication when it comes to understanding how the American political process works, and also the lack of sophistication in comprehending what he is doing in a historical context. That's why I tweeted during this speech, this would be the worst white supremacist speech of all time. The president's grandchildren are Jewish. The president brought in survivors of the massacre in Pittsburgh and specifically and unabashedly ridiculed the idea of anti-Semitism. He specifically acknowledged that some laws can lead to adverse treatment of African Americans based on their race and pointed out a major law that he has addressed to try to fix it. Okay? All of this is major, easy to research. People get lost in all the flair, the pomp, the circumstance of Donald Trump, and they don't actually look at the substance. The tweets blind them, and their own rage drives them insane. It's wild. I don't understand it at all. It drives me insane sometimes, and it's pushing me more and more into where I think only rational people can dwell, which is in the idea that the country has lost its mind. I also loved Buzz Aldrin, by the way. Buzz Aldrin still looks like a badass as they saluted the fact that we went to the moon 50 years ago. It's phenomenal.